in much of England, and you've told people publicly that you will resist migrants coming to their communities.
Yep.
But you don't have the direct power to do anything about it unless...
Right, so what we're going to be doing in Reform Control Council, this is our commitment, we will use every instrument available to us, and those include things like injunctions, those include things like judicial reviews.
Are you saying Reform's lawyers will try to use the courts to close asylum hotels? I'm trying to understand what you actually do.
There are a number of instruments at our disposal.
Imagine your local pub where you celebrated birthdays, watched football matches with neighbours, and formed lifelong friendships, being converted into something completely different. Now imagine discovering that 2,500 signatures and 900 formal objections from your community were essentially ignored. This isn't some hypothetical scenario. It's exactly what happened at the Glen, a beloved community pub in Leicester. The Labour-run council approved its conversion into a mosque, despite overwhelming opposition, leaving residents asking, does democracy still exist at the local level? When 2,500 people signed a petition against turning the Glen Bar into a mosque, Leicester's city government should have paid attention. In the end, isn't that what elected leaders are supposed to do? About 900 people officially complained, which is a huge number for a problem with city planning. They weren't just names on a page, these were real people who cared about keeping the neighbourhood's character. Still, the change was quickly approved by the Leicester City Council, which is run by Labour. It's very clear what they mean. Your point of view is important, but only if it helps them reach their goals. The neighbours weren't worried about religion. Instead, they wanted to protect Hillsborough Road's cultural identity, keep a meeting spot that had been used for generations, and keep the neighbourhood from changing in big ways. This seems even less likely since Yasmin Sati is both the chair of the planning group and the secretary of the Federation of Muslim Organisations. There is a clear conflict of interest here, which makes the whole review process very questionable. How can someone with such clear opposings be able to make an objective choice about this controversial conversion? Because of the lack of openness about this link, residents' anger and mistrust of the council have only grown. When people told the council they were worried about traffic, noise and changes to the neighbourhood's character, they were at best rude. Someone who lives there, Adam, said, "It seems like most rundown places are being turned into mosques."
Solving this, and I have to say, whilst I absolutely sympathise, I'm part of the movement that says we don't want these people in our communities picking up on that. And
I'm not sure that's true, actually, to be fair. Reform's policy is very much to pick them up, deport them, have a minister of deportation.
Right, but David, there is no plan behind that, and I sign up to that intention. But in intention, the Conservative Party threw intentions at us for 14 years. They made promises, they said what they were going to do, they never had a plan for doing it.
He wasn't criticising religion. He was talking about how he saw traditional community places being taken away one by one. The council's rules, like only being open from 7:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. and not allowing loud calls to prayer, except during Ramadan, don't work at all. The main problem, the loss of a community centre that can't be fixed, and the effects on the neighbourhood's identity, is not addressed by these minor restrictions. The Glen case brings to light a troubling fact about modern Britain. Voices that are politically awkward are often ignored, which makes local democracy less useful. The 2,500 people who signed that petition might as well have shouted into thin air with how strongly they spoke out against it. There's more going on here than just a bar against a mosque. The issue at hand is who is allowed to decide what a community is and who can live there. When councils don't listen to strong local opposition, they change structures and destroy the idea of community, consent and participation. There was more to the Glen than just four walls and a roof. It stood for decades of celebrations, memories and ties to the community. For decades, this pub was more than just a place to get a drink. It was a spot where friends got together after work, where weddings were celebrated, and where a lot of people met and helped shape the neighbourhood's character. It told stories through its worn-out bar stools and wooden beams in a way that new buildings can't. The people who lived in Glen had a clear plan for how to bring it back to life and make it the busy community centre it used to be. But the council used the pub's history against this local goal instead of for it. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, they talked a lot about its checkered history and link to gang activity. This selective remembering rewrote history to support their choice by ignoring the decades of good community history that came before those troublesome years. It's not just buildings that neighbourhoods lose when community centres like the Glen Close. They also lose the people who live there. People from different backgrounds don't naturally meet in public places as much as they used to. Instead, more specialised spaces are used. This change destroys the natural connections that help people understand each other and keep society together. The bar was a neutral space where people's differences didn't matter as much as their humanity did. A worrying trend is happening in Britain, and it can be seen in Leicester. Local traditions are falling apart because of how quickly culture is changing. People watch helplessly as familiar sites are taken down, and they often don't have a say in what will be built in their place. The change from a bar to a mosque is an example of this trend happening all over the world. Reform UK is doing something because they see how angry people are getting. In areas they control, they're getting ready to use the law to shut down asylum hotels and paying lawyers to use judicial reviews to stop new businesses from opening. They had a clear leader named Zia Youssef who said, "We will resist the spreading of thousands of illegal immigrants."
Asylum hotels in their communities. This has caused a lot of concern to many people, but you've told them that you will reject migrants.
There are instruments of power available to us.
Well, like what?
Judicial reviews, injunctions, there's planning laws. You know, a lot of these hotels, and there has been litigation around this already. Look, we're not in government yet. That's our plan. And that's why people watching this program who believe in these values, who don't want to live around people whose first action upon coming to this country was to break our law.
Into local communities, which is a huge betrayal of everyone who voted Labour and everyone in the UK. A government efficiency department has also been set up by Reform UK to look into all of its councils for corruption and wasteful spending. This programme, which is based on Elon Musk's plan, aims to cut down on waste while keeping important services running. Youssef said, "If you have a SEND child under a Reform council, you have nothing to fear. Your children will get to school and get to school on time." When real concerns about being heard and feeling like you belong are seen as racism, communities always fall apart. Leicester's dislike of the 2,500 petition signers is not unique.
In much of England, and you've told people publicly that you will resist migrants coming to their communities, but you don't have the direct power to do anything about it unless...
Right. So what we're going to be doing in Reform Control Council, this is our commitment. We will use every instrument available to us, and those include things like injunctions, those include things like judicial reviews.
Are you saying Reform's lawyers will try to use the courts to close asylum hotels? I'm trying to understand what you actually do.
There are a number of instruments at our disposal.
It's part of a national trend where people's worries about fast neighbourhood changes are often ignored, creating a dangerous gap between those who are governed and those who are ruled. The Glen's change from a pub to a mosque brings to light a troubling feature of modern Britain. Today, choices that change a community's identity in big ways are made behind closed doors, and consultation is just a show. The council's decision to turn down 2,500 petition signatures sends a clear message. Your point of view is only important if it helps them reach their goals. This lack of respect for how people feel about the community creates a strong atmosphere of anger. People think they can't change the places they live. When people in a community think their opinions don't matter, the social fabric breaks down. Neighbours start to act like strangers, and ties to the community get weaker. This was never about a bar versus a mosque. It's about whether democracy still works at its most basic level.